And we are live. If you can hear me, if you're watching this live and you can hear me, as usual, please post in the comment that you can indeed hear me. I've got two different microphones set up, so I'm trying to figure out which one may or may not work better. So hopefully this one works. I've got the microphone right here, right above my head. But if that one doesn't work, I have a different one wired as well, a lapel mic. You guys tell me if it is working. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Jared. Much appreciated. All right, I am going to, kind of do a couple of general announcements. Give a few more people a chance to join before I go into the topic du jour. The topic du jour is observation optics. There's been a good amount of discussion on the subject that I've been seeing, and this is also something that I happen to have made some experiments with. So I want to talk about different types of observation optics, how they all jive together, and how they compare in many ways. Okay, so a bit muted, but it works. Okay, I can make it louder, so you guys tell me if this is a bit better. All right, this should make it a good bit louder. I fix it where it was. All right, is Mr. Manager, is this better? Is this less still muted, or is it okay? All right, I'll go ahead and assume that for now it's okay. All right, where was I? Yes, topic du jour, being observation optics. Before moving to that, so if you watched my little, okay, so this is better, excellent, right. Then let's do this. So let's do the lapel, and I'll switch to that, hold on. How about now? Is this better at all? It died. That's not good. My camera died. If my camera keeps on dying, it's going to be a long evening. I hope it's going to be okay. And it died again. Crap. All right, guys. I assume you can still hear me, but can't see me. My camera keeps on crapping out. So, shit. I apologize for these technical difficulties. This is new. So this is the crappy. So short mics make okay. Short mic sounds better. So this is a crappy webcam on a computer. I have another camera I can hook up. If you guys are willing to hold on for just 1 minute, I'm gonna go get that camera and connect that, and hopefully it's going to work better for me. Please give me 1 moment. This blows. Okay. Let's try again. Okay, how's this? Is this better? Okay. Is this better, gentlemen? This is a much wider field of view, but not too bad. Cam girl quality to it. Oh. See, I had to think about that for a moment. All right, thank you guys. I apologize about the technical difficulties of the camera. This is my 30th live cast. The camera that I used for the first 29 of them just crapped out on me, which is really, really frustrating. Let me see if I can do something else real quick, and we will get started. All right. I think we're good. I think the color got better. That's interesting. Yeah. I'll stop messing with this crap. All right. Couple of quick things. If you've watched my little YouTube thingy, you know that I started playing with the simulator from Mantis, the one that's called Blackbeard. And Blackbeard is the thing that is here somewhere. Hold on. So Mantis is a thing that goes into your AR-15 that allows you to basically do dry practice in your house by replacing the bolt and the magazine in your regular AR. This thing goes in instead of a bolt and a charging handle. It's got a laser up front. This goes in instead of a magazine. That's basically a battery. And what this insert does is not only does it have a laser up front when you pull the trigger, it shoots out a laser, it also resets your trigger. And that's a big deal. So I don't have to pull the charging handle all the time. And I've been kind of messing with it. I can't show it to you in a rifle because YouTube will kill the stream. But I can tell you that it's working really quite nicely for me, much better than I thought it would. So this was an unexpectedly nice. This is an unexpectedly nice performing gadget. I'm very pleased. I also have this laser insert for a handgun, and they do the app called the Laser Academy, where what you do is you can set up a target and set up a phone, and it'll tell you where you hit, how the dot was, and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of I'm still messing with it. I'm trying to figure out all the features and all that, but it looks very promising. How many pulls you're getting per charge? So I don't know. I haven't gotten as far, but looking at documentation, I think it's tens of thousands of pulls per charge. Definitely thousands. Thousands of tens of thousands. Definitely thousands. I've done maybe a few hundred pulls at this stage, and I have not had to recharge it. So it actually looks pretty good. Now, onto an earlier comment. Ready to look at a bunch of shit I can't afford. Some of the stuff I have here today, normal sane people can actually afford. So, keep that in mind. Okay. Another thing I started messing with is a new mount from American Rifle Company called Embrace, whatever that's supposed to be. I have sort of a conflicted relationship with the American Rifle Company products. People love them because it's a single screw. I don't love the hinge. I think it's like I said, I think it's a solution looking for a problem. But the way here he designed the accessory interface is sort of interesting, and I want to play with it a little bit more. Right now, the scope that's in it is a US Optics fixed and power design, and I'll play a little bit with that. I also just received an SPRM mount from Griffin Armament, pronounced presumably as a sperm mount, so somebody that has a sense of humor. This particular version is designed for the Schmidt & Bender 5-20 ultra short, and it's a little bit lighter than the standard mount. So I pulled the ultra short out of the regular rings that was sitting in, and I'll put it in this mount and experiment with how it all works. How it works on basically on a gas gun. I'm viewing this as a platform for a precision gas gun. Another potentially really interesting experiment. So I'm looking at a few different mounts just to see how it all works. The Guess Your Boost contest naturally is back. Good luck. I will give you a hint. I've never tried this before. And you will never see this on this show again. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Maybe I should stick to tea. With that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about observation optics. What is observation optics? Anything that doesn't really go. Speaking of SPRM, see, because intent and emotion does not really transfer through the written word. I don't know if you want to talk about SPRM mount or, well, about the way this abbreviation is pronounced. Really hard to tell. Or are you implying of the milky color of whatever is in here? So it's a darkened glass. And the consistency, I actually don't know. See, I have no way to say if this tastes similar or not, but I do not like this taste. That little bit of perversion out of the way. It's not that thick, actually. It just looks that way through the glass. I got a new glass from Norland. I like different types of whiskey glasses, stuff like that. Norland makes some really interesting glassware. And Norlan. If you're not familiar with the company, I really like this stuff. All right. Moving right along. What is an observation optic? By and large, when we talk about observation optics, we talk about binoculars or we talk about spotting scope. Somewhat weirdly, we never seem to count cameras with long lenses and anything like that as an observation optic, and I don't know why, really. There are very long lens cameras that will do a lot of things. I mean, I use a spotting scope frequently as a long lens using a phone scope adapter to hook up my phone to it and take pictures of something fairly far away. But by and large, if you talk observation optics for shooters, everybody thinks binoculars and spotting scopes. Shooting world is arguably not the biggest market for binoculars and spotters. People buy it for general observation. Birders buy them all the time. Nice ones and in large quantities. There are apparently a lot of birders out there. Until somewhat recent, I didn't know that such a thing as birding existed. My interest in birds is purely gastronomical, and even then, I prefer actual meat, not some unwholesome bird. But apparently, birders buy a lot of binoculars and rifle scopes, and they really drive the requirements in many ways. It's not a bad thing for us shooters. They are demanding. They want an optic that's easy to use, and they want an optic that gives you good color and good performance. And that has, to a significant degree, driven the evolution of binoculars and spotting scopes to probably to a lesser degree that we all use. What are the requirements for birders, and what are the requirements for shooters as far as observation optics go? It's not necessarily easy to deconvolve the two. So let's think about what you will be doing with a spotter or with a binocular. Long-range spotting optics. Are you spying on Area 51 for us? Let us know what you see. Look, why would I be spying on my own backyard? I practically live there. But anyhow, but should explain a few things. But anyhow, as a shooter, what do you need out of an observation optic, right? Well, if you're a hunter, you'll be glassing a lot and looking at things and trying to figure out where the animal is. So you will be spending a lot of time looking through binoculars, scanning through the area, and trying to find something, whatever it is you're looking for, a deer, a sheep, whatever else, right? In April, I went on this Odad sheep hunt that was very, very glassing intensive. And we used several different binoculars that I should have here somewhere. Here you go. So the binocular there that I used the most over there was the Vortex Razor Uhd 10x42. And, you know, a lot of optics come and go, and I'm probably going to keep these. These are really, really nice binoculars. Easy to hold, good image quality. Not my favorite configuration. I prefer 10x50s, but these work really, really nicely. I used when I needed to range, I used the Fury 5000, which I also like, although after some consideration, I think once I publish my review, these I'm going to sell. So watch the announcements on my website. I'm beginning to put some stuff up here and there, and I'll talk about why at a future point. But the big thing here is that you're spending a lot of time behind glass, and what you want is something forgiving, something with a good color, because all of that will play a huge role into eye fatigue. Glancing through an optic and staring through it for a significant amount of time is really, really different. One of the reasons, for example, why we talk about binocular collimation is for eye fatigue. If the two barrels of a binocular are not perfectly collimated, meaning not perfectly pointed in the same direction, when you just glance, it may be looking sharp and everything, it looks okay. You spend a few minutes behind a binocular, you'll walk away with a raging headache, right? And that's not picnic. That's not a minor. That's not at all a minor thing. That's one of the reasons. For example, right now in many shooting circles, people talk a lot about big eyes binoculars, right? What is big eyes? I should have one here somewhere that I've been messing with, and. Okay, I think I found it. I've talked about it briefly in the past, I think. And there we go. So this is a tracked toric 15x56. This is big eyes. So to give you some scale, here's the Vortex Razor Uhd 10x42. This is 15x56, right? You see the significant difference in size. This is a series binocular, and really, really nice one, by the way. I'm really impressed. For the money, I mean, that's freaking remarkable. It's this is what's called big eyes, and the recent popularity of big eye binoculars, antelope hunters have been using them forever, but recent popularity of all these big eyes binoculars came from the fact that people realize that when you are glassing, meaning when you expect to be spending a lot of time behind an optic, using both eyes is much more forgiving and much more relaxing than using one eye as you would with a spotting scope, for example. So here's the spotting scope that lives in my range bag. This is a Athlon Chronos Tactical 7-42 by 60. I really like this spotter for a lot of different things, and I'll revisit that momentarily. But if you're going to be peering through an optic for a long time, 2 eyes is better than 1. And there are other advantages now. I'll get to that momentarily. If you are not going to be peering through an extended period of time, you can get more magnification out of a spotting scope. If I want to, the basic idea is that if I want to look for something, I'm going to grab the binoculars. If I want to explore something in detail, I'm going to grab the spotting scope. But I do not intend and do not like to use a spotting scope for a significant amount of time. Some spotting scope companies are beginning to recognize that. Finally, Swarovski created their BTX eyepiece. And what was I? Yeah, so binocular type eyepiece where you have two eyepieces looking through the same spot. Right? That doesn't give you the same depth perception yet with binoculars. Once again, something I'll get back to in a moment. But it does help substantially with eye fatigue, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Tracked as in tracked scopes. They usually make obtainable optics. That's correct. So tracked, companies called Tracked Optics. A couple of former Nikon guys who went off and started their own company. It's only direct from them. I'm somewhat friendly with one of the owners, so we chat a little bit here and there. He's an interesting dude. I like the guy. They're trying to do the right thing, trying to do a good thing. They are more obtainable with a lot of stuff I normally talk about. More importantly, just about everything I've seen from Tracked so far, it hasn't been that much stuff, right? I've looked at their 4-20x50 precision rifle scope. I've had a cursory look at a couple others. They have a really nice 4.5-30x56 ELR scope that's doing well for them, I think. I've briefly looked at a couple of binoculars, and I got my hands on these 15s now. They're all that I've seen are good for the money. As in, I'm quite impressed. So, in years past, one of my favorite larger binoculars was the Vortex Kaibab. And this to me looks, and I know it's made in the same place, same OEM. To me, this looks like an improved version of a Kaibab. I think it's a little bit better. But it runs, I think, $1,200. $1,200 for this much quality is not bad at all. Okay. What's the spec on the binoculars? 15 power magnification, 56mm objective, 4.1 degree field of view. I assume you're talking about Tracked. It's their only 15 power binoculars, so you can find it on their website. I'm quite impressed. Chance here. Greetings. For spotting scopes, what mag would be enough for 100-yard zero spotting and up to 1200? So stick around for a little bit. I'm going to talk about magnification for a moment. In a moment, you don't need that much magnification as optics are good. If optics are good, but let's talk about that. There are other considerations. So just give me a minute. I just don't want to fall too far behind with the comments, so I'm going to make interruptions to catch up and then continue on what I was talking about. Drew, I'm pretty grumpy right now as a set that my grandfather gave me 30 years ago that he had for 30 years. My buddy dropped them last week. Broken now. Tasco 7-35, 346 foot 10 yards. For a 7-power binocular, that's pretty narrow field of view, I gotta say. Those were all Japanese Tascos. They're actually very decent binoculars. I mean, you can do better now, of course. But if it was your grandfather's, I mean, that definitely has some sentimental value, I'm sure. And Tasco is now owned by Bushnell, and old binoculars, I'm not convinced they can fix them. There may be people who can work on old binoculars, but I would not begin to know who might be able to fix it. Okay. All right, moving on. One of the things that is different for shooters versus birders is that as a shooter, I am comparatively frequently spotting for others. What spotting for others means is that somebody else is shooting and I am trying to figure out if they're missing
even if they're hitting things, I'm trying to help them correct their fire, right? And if I am trying to do that, I need some sort of a reticle. Drew asked a good question. Do spotting scopes, binoculars, or binos offer reticles in terms of FFP or SFP? Kinda. Okay, that's another one. PP would a live event on night vision binoculars and binoculars for shooting at night be possible in the future? Yes, I'm conceiving one. Anyhow, where was I? Yeah, I need some means to figure out by how much a person missed, and the types of corrections that most people are used to, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, it's not very quantifiable. Even if I give you a correction in linear units, hold 1 foot here, 1 foot there, that's also a little bit counterproductive because you don't always know what 1 foot is. If I am calling out corrections, I need to be able to call them out in some sort of angle unit, either minutes of angle or milliradian, depending on what your shtick is. And I am definitely a milliradian person. Okay. Birders and people who use observation optics purely for looking at stuff, they don't need the reticle and they don't want the reticle, it just kind of gets in your way. But as shooters, we do. And I'm slowly transitioning the majority of the optics, observation optics I have, to something that has a reticle of some sort, because I'm finding it that useful, and I'm also finding that it really does not get in my way. As far as front focal plane or second focal plane, well, in the grand scheme of things, that kind of a distinction so in a binocular, there's no front or second focal plane. A traditional binocular, they're built differently. They only have one focal plane inside. There are some spotters who are built more like rifle scopes with a proper lens-based director system. And the two types of spotting scopes that work that way are stuff like this. And the only two on the market that I know of, it's this Athlon Chronos Tactical and Bushnell's LMSS, and I think they're made in the same place. And also the folded light path spotters, and the best example of that is a Hensoldt Spotter 60 or Spotter 45. They're freakishly expensive, that's why I don't own one, but those are the best spotters for shooters that I'm aware of right now. So those are front focal plane designs because they're built more like a rifle scope, so there is a front focal plane and a second focal plane. In a conventional spotting scope, something like this, this is another Athlon. This is the 65mm Ares, and I use this. It's a fairly small spotter. I use it all the time. This is a fixed power eyepiece that has a reticle in it. I have not yet seen variable eyepiece designs that have a reticle in them for conventional spotting. So conventional spotting scope means there's a separate body and a separate eyepiece. With those, I have not really seen anything that would have a reticle that's valid at all magnifications because of how the zooming happens. The zooming in a spotter like this happens within the eyepiece. I do have a zoom eyepiece for the spotter, but it does not have a reticle. The reticle is a fixed power eyepiece, and I use it all the time, and it works quite nicely for me. There are binoculars with reticles. Most of them are not done hugely well. Some are better than others. And there are not too many there to choose from. I'll talk a little bit about it. And I'll talk a little bit in the end about what kind of an observation device I, as a shooter, would really want that doesn't currently exist in the market. And I've talked to a bunch of manufacturers about it. Hopefully somebody will bring one out. Okay. A couple of comments. Minox has a spotter with a reticle. Don't remember the specs. Yeah, they have a couple of called Minox Z. Those are folded light path spotters. They do have reticles. I've never seen one live. And Jared, Schmidt and Leica both popped up on the SHOT Show map. Yeah, I saw that. I'll ask the SMB guys. Last time I talked to them, about a month ago, they were not sure if they're coming. I hope they are. They've been doing some interesting stuff. Kind of like where they're going with this. Chan, how would sunshade in the cover with a hole in the middle? Don't know what it is called. Effective scopes, Binos optically. Hole in the middle, depending on what it's called, is basically called the reducing aperture. The semi-standard thing for reducing reduced aperture is excuse me. So this reduced aperture is called what's a nice way of saying this? Basically, it decreases the amount of light that gets through, but it greatly increases the depth of field of a scope. And depending on how small you make it, there can be some other effects. Generally, if you make the apertures a little bit smaller, it increases depth of field, makes everything sharper. But you end up with a smaller exit pupil and less light. So that's the trade-off. It works the same way in spotters as it does in rifle scopes. Okay. All right. So reticles. Not enough spotters and binoculars have reticles in them. That's just the plain truth, and I'm doing my part by complaining. If you ever talk to manufacturers, point out that they should add some reticles here and there as necessary. All right, moving on. Binoculars versus spotters. As I alluded earlier, binoculars have an advantage in ease of use and in eye fatigue, right? If you have a well-collimated binocular and you have a steady enough position, or you are able to support the binocular well, or you're glassing off of a tripod, you can glass for a fairly significant amount of time without suffering extreme eye fatigue. With the spotting scope, not that simple. There will be eye fatigue, and there's not a ton you can do about it. If you have let's say I have the spotting scope, this is a variable device. It has a 60mm objective. I can set the magnification to 15 power. And here I have a 15 power binocular. Weight-wise, they're pretty close, right? One 60mm objective, two 56mm objectives, same magnification. Which one would I see better with? Okay, anybody has any ideas? Mr. JB is here. Hey guys, I'm late to the party. Since you're late to the party, you get to answer a question. If I have a binocular and a spotting scope of the same magnification, which one would I be seeing better with? And do you think you can quantify that? Anybody? Quantify it for me. Binocular versus spotter, 2 eyes versus 1 eye, same magnification. Which one will I see better with? Spotter has a 60mm objective. Binocular barrels each has a 56mm objective. Anyone? Anyone at all? I'm looking at the comments. I'm not seeing anything worthwhile. You can do better than this, guys. Guesses? Drew says Binos. You are correct. Our Mr. RSTX says Binos. Is also correct. Mr. JB says, I don't know. Now you know. Drew and RSTX told you. But by how much? What do you think? Any guesses? You guys can do it. Yes, Chan, it is quiz time. I'm going to calculate something real quick while I'm at it. And I'll give you guys a moment to think about it, and then I'll go into more detail. Because there is some theoretical stuff, and then there is some stuff that I've actually done some experiments on, because this subject has occupied me for a little bit. Okay. 2 eyes are better than 1. Binos. Mr. Tata says 30%. That's very, very close. Mr. STX says mine are image stabilized, so it's not a fair comparison. Which stabilized binoculars are you using? I'm very curious. Drew says 25%. Chen says 50%. Okay, so 25 to 30% is generally in the ballpark. Literature generally says between 20 and 30%. And there are specific, assuming more or less similar optical quality and stuff like that. But that 20, 30 to 30% is valid primarily before your eyes get tired, meaning if you have been observing for not too long of a time. And that seems to make a fairly substantial difference. Okay. RSTX has a Canon. Which one do you have? The 12 to 36 or which one? Oh, 10 to 30. Okay. Yeah, 10 to 30 is respectable. It's not my favorite binocular, but it works. My basic problem was with it was the low small exit pupil. Although stabilization really helps. Okay. So literature says 20 to 30% or thereabouts, but that seems to be consistent with what I've measured or experimented with when I am fairly fresh, right? If I've been glassing for a little while. So a little while back, I did this experiment. I used to own this Vortex Kybab 18x56. No, 20x56 binocular. Not the greatest binocular in the world, but reasonable. And I ran it next to a Razor spotting scope, and I had at the time I was using a 65mm spotting scope that was 18 to 48 power, I think, something like that, or 18 to something. Don't remember the highest magnification. I think it was 16 to 48. Yeah, 16 to 48. And I spent some time looking at them side by side. It was a reasonably decent comparison, trying to figure out in different light levels after different amount of glassing, what magnification do I need to ramp up this spotting scope to equal what I'm seeing with the binoculars. The results were interesting. During the first 10-15 minutes of this whole experiment, the difference was about 20-25% for me, right? And as I got through, and as I got more tired, and as the light got lower, the binocular started having more of an advantage. So your guess is, if Chen guessed 50%, Drew 25, Mr. Tata guessed 30%. For me, the performance advantage of a binocular increased from about 20-25% to around 50% as I got more tired and as the light got lower. If you are trying to see something, both the amount of light you get and the magnification matter. But even with the larger objective spotters, once you're tired, using one eye gets tricky. It gets increasingly tricky. At this stage in the game, I am willing to carry more glass into the field, but I do not want to be glassing with a spotting scope. For range use, for spotting impact for other people, I use spotting scopes all the time. When I'm trying to find something, I use binoculars, and I'm finding that to work much better for me, especially if I'm going to spend some amount of time, significant amount of time glassing, and I might be shooting after that. If I find something that I plan to shoot, if I want to be shooting after that and I spend a fair amount of time glassing, I do not want my eyes to be tired, because that will also affect my shooting. So I'm relying on binoculars increasingly more and more. But at the range, I'm still using spotters a lot. I often have binoculars with me when I go to the range, but I have a spotting scope with me always when I go to the range. Drew has a question. Although you at first see more, does it cause tunnel vision after a while versus mono? You're not locked in as much. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by tunnel vision. Are you talking about situational awareness around you or what? Drew, please elaborate on what exactly you mean by tunnel vision in this case. Mr. STX, I use TeleVue 85 telescope as a spotting scope. I'm tempted to try the Binocular with it. It makes a significant difference for eye fatigue. And your TeleVue 85 is an exceptional spotting scope. I remember I played with it for a while, but if memory serves me right, it was admittedly a while back. It was not weather sealed, so I had some problems with moisture getting inside. But Frank, I'd like to give my 11-year-old son binoculars for Christmas. What would you recommend in the $500 price range? Spotter at the range, binoculars in the field, in my opinion. Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad way to go. What kind of binoculars would I recommend in the $500 price range? Let me see if I can pull something up. So I have not looked at comparatively inexpensive binoculars in a little bit. So I want to look up a couple of things and make sure that the stuff that I'm talking about is still on the market. Oh, by the way, so the 15 power toric is not $1,200. It's $1,044. I was wrong. And there was a really nice Maven that so Maven Optics is not my favorite company in the world. They're a bunch of arrogant pricks. I'm sort of an arrogant prick, so I know one when I see one. But I like a lot of their binoculars quite a bit, and I want to see if the one I looked at is still in production. So when it comes to binoculars for kids, I like lower magnifications, and unfortunately, so many people don't. Okay, so one of my favorite binoculars, the binocular that I use overall for general hikes and especially more than most, is an old Vortex Viper 6x32 that is unfortunately no longer made. But Maven does have a 6x30 B3 binocular that I'm going to pull on the screen momentarily. That is right at $500. So they have, for a kid, crap, did I do? My apologies. There we go. Hope you guys see it. Yeah. So for a kid, I would really be leaning towards something that's not very big and something that's not very high magnification. There's not a ton of 7 power binoculars these days, but Maven's little 6x30 is really, really nice binocular. I was quite impressed. Okay. I have not seen the Bushnell Legend. And but the Forge is good. Okay, so Drew's okay. So that's right. So when you're talking about tunnel vision, you're talking about eye strain, and due to both eyes being focused in on binos versus the mono, only one eye gets strained, where you pull away more often. No, that's not the case. Your eyes work together, and what gets strained is not your eye so much as your brain. If you've been staring through a spotting scope for a long time, your overall vision is strained and tired. It's not just one eye. Okay. Jared, anything in the shooting optics world that you haven't yet seen but you're looking forward to examining? So much stuff. I don't know for how much of it I'm gonna have time, but this is a long and separate conversation, and I don't really want to answer this until SHOT Show, because I make plans what I'm going to examine for the coming year during SHOT Show. For this year, I'm more or less booked with what else I'm gonna be looking at. So we can talk about it separately, but this is too long of a conversation for right now. Chan, use 60mm most common objective lens size for spotter scopes. Any benefit going bigger or smaller? 60mm is actually not that common of a size. Most spotters out there are 65, 80, 85 millimeters. Smaller ones are not as common. They go as low as 50. But the most common ones are 65 and 80, 85. There is a benefit for going bigger, as in large objectives, you will ultimately see better. There's a benefit for going smaller objective, smaller optic. It's going to be easier to carry around, easier to take in the field. The best spotting scope in the world is of no use to you if, when you need it, it's not there. One of the reasons I use these smallish spotters a good bit is that it's much easier for me to have it with me. It's like a camera, right? The best camera in the world is not going to be helpful if when you need to take a picture, the camera is at home, right? So that's the same exact configuration. Okay. Also, do lower power binoculars or lower power binoculars easier to get behind bigger eye box? Yeah, generally yes, but the exit pupil calculation for binoculars is the same as for rifle scope, objective divided by magnification. Stuff with larger exit pupil is easier to get behind. Stuff with lower magnification is easier to hold steady. If you're going to be glassing a lot handheld, you want not too much magnification. If you're going to be glassing a lot from a supported position off of a tripod, something like that, then you can afford a little bit more magnification. If you question a lot of people, most will say that for handheld they want 10 or 12. I did a couple of times over the years this double blind test where I had similar looking binoculars with names, labels, everything taped up, almost everything. Everybody handheld saw the best with about 8 power. But if they knew what they were looking at, everybody said they saw the best with a 10 power, right? So there's that. It's you kind of need to figure out what you want to do. Handheld, there's always some hand tremor, so less magnification might allow you to see better. Okay, that's an interesting question. Why do Binos only have one eye focus diopter piece instead of two? So for a fairly simple reason, in a conventional rifle scope, you need to have this diopter adjustment to focus the eyepiece on a reticle. Most binoculars don't have a reticle. The ones with the reticle actually allow you separate focus for the reticle. A conventional roof prism binocular, something like this Razor 10x42, a conventional. Let me try something. Like, I keep on thinking that I'm a little bit out of focus. Let me see if I can refocus this thing. How about now? There we go. That's better. That bothers me less. In a conventional binocular like this guy, there is this center focus. That focuses the image. It also compensates for your eye doing something else. So the diopter focus on a binocular, here it's in the right barrel, is there for one thing and one thing only. Your two eyes are not identical. So you use this diopter adjustment to compensate for the difference between your eyes. And once that is compensated for, the rest of your vision irregularities are accounted for by using the center focuser. Okay, that's why there's only one, really. That's why there is only one diopter focus. Thank you. A few hundred is not a big deal. Yeah, I'm with you. So for a kid, I wouldn't necessarily give them a particularly expensive binocular. So the binocular that my kids use a lot, I should have one here. Let me see. I have a standing desk, and under my desk, I have shelves with a ton of different binoculars in them. No, that's not what I'm looking for. This is my 6 power binocular. This is the old Vortex Viper. This is the one I use all the freaking time as a general purpose binocular. nice light. And if I've been hiking uphill and I'm huffing and puffing and I'm generally shaky, the slower magnification really helps me. But that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for this. That's another Vortex, but Kowa also makes one. One of the best and expensive binoculars for kids is a Kowa YF that used to be Leopold Yosemite. Used to be the same thing. This is now discontinued. Vortex Raptor 6.5 by 32 little poro prism, and Kowa YF 6 by 30 is similar size. Center focus roof prism, $100. Really, really nice. Like for kids overall, something like this for $100 is an amazing deal. When we're done, I'll post some links. I'll look around, see what kind of binoculars like this are available. 6-power binoculars are not hugely difficult to make, so you don't need to spend a lot of money, right? If you want a roof prism, get the Maven. If you just want to see how they can handle it, get them a Kowa YF 6 by 30, $100. And you'd be amazed on how nice that little binocular is given the low cost. Okay. RSTX, I'm getting repetitive, but Canon 10 by 30 IS is awesome. It's 21 ounces, not too heavy, but IS is eye-opening, pun intended, and easy to use. Yes, IS makes a huge difference. My basic problem with this binocular is just low light performance. I like a larger exit pupil. It's nice and stable, which really, really helps. But in a binocular, typically I want, in a general purpose binocular, I just want a little more light. If it was a 10 by 42, I'd be much happier, but the way they do stabilization, it's harder to do a large objective. Canon and now SIG do some image stabilized binoculars. I'm kind of watching it to see what they're going to come up with, but it is potentially a very useful thing. Okay. RSTX for kids. Yeah, for kids it would work too well. It would work fairly well, but I don't know if I want to give something reasonably expensive to a kid. How do you like Steiner scopes and binoculars? You know, quite a bit, actually. One of the binoculars I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and I'm going to have a separate video on it, is this little guy. I want to talk a little bit about laser range-finding binoculars, and this is the 10 by 50 with a laser rangefinder. It's really nice. I generally like Steiner products. They march to a bit of a different drum. Some of the configurations are odd to me, but a lot of the stuff they do is generally well-made and well-designed. I like the M-series scopes. I like a lot of their binoculars. They have a new Peregrine binocular with the laser rangefinder. It looks promising. I've looked at quite a few over the years. They're not always the best for the money, I think, but they're always competitive, and I've never seen a bad Steiner binocular, which is kind of interesting. In some way, I thought they're absolutely exceptional. Jared, I'm interested in your opinion of Leopold binoculars. Are they any good, or can we do considerably better for the price? I haven't looked at this latest batch of Leopold binoculars. In the past, they were quite competitive, but not class-leading price-wise. But this latest batch they've got, I simply have not tested. So I don't want to bullshit. It is on my list to pay a little bit more attention to next year. I want to do more with binoculars of all sorts. But I'm also switching gears a little bit. Right now, I'm looking at several binoculars with a laser rangefinder. And given that I'm a shooter, not a birder, I do not anticipate ever purchasing again, for my personal use, a binocular without a laser rangefinder in it. Right? It's just that. For the things that I do, I'm finding it so useful that I'm from a shooting standpoint, I'm sort of losing interest in binoculars that don't have LRFs in them. And I'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. So I'll see what Leopold is offering. I thought they had a laser range-finding binocular made by Milton for them, if I remember correctly. That promised to be really good, so I need to revisit that. But as far as covering the whole spectrum of their binoculars, if there is significant demand, if a lot of people want it, I'll take a look. But for my personal use, the laser rangefinder is becoming so critical that I really want that in there. Okay. Drew, Those right there looks like my 60-year-old broken Chinese unit set face right now. I'm telling you, Drew, if you just want an expensive binocular for occasional use, buy those Kowa YF 6x30s. Like I said, I'll put up a link. They are, you'll be amazed at how much quality you can get there for $100. Also Chinese and stuff. Ep.30, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you. You are very welcome. Mr. Geography Nerd, the 6-power Leupold Yosemite is my go-to. I had some $450 ones I can't think of at the moment. I bought both at the same time. I sold the expensive one. Not surprising. Poro binoculars are comparatively easy to build, and they're for a little while. There were several really nice ones. They're harder to seal. I've seen some of these center focus poros that were not particularly well sealed, but also for $100, I'm not going to complain too much. Wow, very interesting. I'd like an LRF, a pair of binos. A great point. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying not to fall too behind on the questions, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these LRF binoculars momentarily. Drew, how soon before the optics become digital? Takes an image, digitize that, then converts, spit it out onto a screen or smart cell phone. There are already some out there, and fundamentally, digital camera is exactly that. It's not going to replace a proper binocular just yet, but we'll definitely see more electro-optic integration. One of the problems with purely digital binocular is that to get a good amount of magnification, you're somewhat limited by the pixelization, because the sensor with some number of pixels kind of gives you a distinct resolution limit, and it's not that hard to reach. And if you try to use a lot of pixels, you can end up with a fairly large optic, and you can also end up with comparatively poor low light performance. All of that can be overcome. There've been a fair amount of work on binning and high dynamic range imaging. I have a patent or two here and there on high dynamic range imaging from my previous life. It can be overcome, but if you overcome all of that, things can get comparatively expensive, not that small, and you will lose a little bit of a depth perception. So one of the things I haven't gotten to yet, and I think this is kind of a good point to talk a little bit more about it, is when you are using two eyes. The way we normally look, we use that for distance estimation. A lot of our depth perception comes due to using two eyes. There is a natural also increase in visual acuity when both eyes are open. For example, if I close one eye like this and look with this eye, there's an obvious drop in visual acuity, 20-30%, unsurprisingly. If I keep this eye open and close it like this, my other eye sees better than if I actually close it like this. There are some weird things that the brain does, the way it processes things. But one of the things that happens if I'm using only one eye, whether it's like this or whether I actually close the eyelids, my depth perception disappears. When you are using anything with a single lens, whether a spotting scope or a camera or something like that, your depth perception is somewhat limited. You can only get this depth perception from knowing the relative position of the objects and from the level of defocus in front of you and behind you. It's something, the depth of field, another thing we need to talk about. With a binocular, not only do you get to use both eyes, have less eye fatigue, but also your brain is taking these two separate images and creating a three-dimensional depth map in addition to a regular image that you see. And that allows your brain to interpret what you're seeing that much better. So the perceived image quality with two eyes also depends on having two barrels. And that's one of the things that really gives you an advantage. You can do amazing things with a single lens, single screen. And a lot of the cell phone technology is actually applicable to the stuff we do with observation optics. And I've seen some startups do this, and we'll see some interesting stuff before too long. But perfectly digitizing a binocular is a little bit trickier. A lot of that work has been done through night vision devices and night vision goggles of all sorts and stuff like that. And some of that will eventually spill over into dioptics. But unless they manage to give you better depth perception at a reasonable price, I think we'll still be seeing comparatively conventional binoculars, maybe with some projected screens and some other stuff to add additional information from other sensors, but we'll be seeing conventional binoculars with some electro-optic integration for a long time to come. Okay. Please post a link of these covers. I will do so. So after we're done, I'm gonna go and make some recommendations or like post some links to the things that I've talked about, stuff like that. Some of them will be affiliate links, and interest of general disclaimer. I don't, as I've said before, I don't like the affiliate marketing thing too much. I prefer to be supported directly by people who enjoy my content. That's why on my website, if you want to comment and stuff, there is a paywall. And for those of you who are supporting me, I really do appreciate it. I much prefer that method. As the number of paying members grows, I will phase out the whole affiliate link business, but for now there'll be some. Okay. What's your personal choice for laser rangefinder binocular? I enjoyed your review of the Delta, but is it your first choice? Well, depends on how much money you want to spend. This is very much on topic. I want to talk a little bit about LRF binoculars in general. For the money, I think the Delta Titanium RF 9x45 is the best I've seen yet. The laser rangefinder needs to have some sort of a minimum feature set to truly be useful. And the minimum feature set, and as I have a bunch laser rangefinders, laser rangefinder binoculars here with apps that talk to the phone, don't talk to the phone, doing all sorts of other stuff. A lot of that stuff is nice. What is the minimum feature set that is satisfactory to me? The minimum feature set that is satisfactory to me is, okay, JB, thanks, sir. The minimum feature set for laser rangefinder, whether it's in a binocular or standalone, the minimum feature set that is acceptable to me is I want to measure the distance and the angle, or the equivalent horizontal distance, because for shooting, that's what matters, right? So the LRF I use the most is the now ancient, but I still like it a lot, SIG Kilo 2400 ABS. That does talk to my cell phone, does all sort of stuff, and nowadays I mostly use this together with the Razor UHD binoculars, but LRFs are getting better all the time, and some new interesting stuff is coming out, so I might be switching. But that's what I use most of the time. If the binocular just gives me distance, that's not quite enough, because I find myself often enough times shooting uphill or downhill, and this angle will change fairly dramatically your ballistic calculation. Okay. The other thing that most laser rangefinding binoculars don't have, and as a shooter I want, is a reticle. Pretty much the only binocular I know that has both a laser rangefinder and a reticle in it is this Steiner 10x50. It has an LRF, and in the left barrel it has a reticle. So when I observe something, I can measure the distance. I can see it really well. This is a nice binocular. Optically, this thing is really, really good. Absolutely worth it. It's $3,000. It's expensive. It's big and all that. Amazing depth of field, really good optics, really nice binocular. It has an Achilles heel in that it's an older laser rangefinder from a feature standpoint. It does not have an angle indicator, unfortunately. I hope they'll update it. If they update this thing to give me distance and angle, and this, I'm not fully done with my evaluation of this, but it can see to about mile and a half, range to about mile and a half pretty comfortably. If they updated this to give me a distance and angle, I'd absolutely buy one. All right, because for shooting, measure the distance, have the reticle if I'm spotting somebody else. This does almost everything I need, and with very, very good optical quality, right? It's almost complete feature set. The binocular that I want does not exist, because what I want in a binocular, I want a good quality laser rangefinder. I want to be able to see to, I don't know, about 3,000 yards. I want to be able to range good size object to about 3,000 yards, maybe a little more, but that's about right. I want to get angle, meaning whether the target, whether when I'm looking at the target, if it's uphill or downhill, and equivalent horizontal distance, and I want a reticle. And such a device does not exist. If I could get a 15 power binocular with such a laser rangefinder and a reticle, I'd buy one. If I could get a 10 power binocular, this is almost there, so close, I'd buy one, or anything in between. When I'm doing laser rangefinding, I lean toward having a little bit more magnification than a conventional binocular that I would just carry around. But for prolonged observation, it would have to be supported, right? So it would not. It does not work. I don't have the steadiest hands in the world. It does not work especially well for me if I'm doing any sort of prolonged observation handheld. For a longer term use handheld, I'm at my best with 9 or less. 10 gets slightly shaky, and you go higher than that, and I'm just not good at that. Okay, Drew, thank you, sir. Oh, great, Drew Bradley managed to invent transgendered money. Nice. Good sense of humor, I like that. Where was I? Okay, where was I? I was answering Jared's question. Okay. The best laser rangefinder binoculars on the market right now are really expensive. The Leicas, the Zeiss's, the Swarovskis, they're about $3,000. Great laser rangefinders, amazing binoculars. Most of the stuff that's less expensive, like I bring up this Vortex Fury 5000 quite a lot. I like it. It's quite good. As a binocular for $1,500, somewhat more, the Delta 9x45 optically was better. This is a better laser rangefinder in terms of features and stuff like that. The electronics are so expensive. But if I use just that as a standalone, as my only binocular, I'm not sufficiently happy with the optical quality, right? It, like this sucker talks to my watch. All the electronic integration is really nice. I really like it. If it was just a little better optical, I would keep it. But if I have to carry a laser rangefinding binocular and a conventional binocular with me, then I'll just have the conventional binocular and a small laser rangefinder and be done, right? For the money, the Delta 9x45, I think, is the best that I have seen so far. All of the other stuff in that price range that I have seen, there may be something I haven't seen, right? That I have seen has not been, in my opinion, good enough optical standalone binocular, and the Delta is. The Steiner 10x50, it's $3,000, and it's old military style where there's no center focus. So each individual eyepiece is individually focused. But once you kind of focus it at about 100 yards or thereabouts, it has so much depth of field that I can just look around and never touch the focuser again. And that appeals to me. I would prefer different eye cups that has military eye cups that military people like. I prefer the more conventional ones, but that would not stop me. The only reason I'm not buying this from Steiner is that it does not have an angle, inclinometer angle indicator, right? I have another laser rangefinder here, is Miopta Optica LR, that I've been leisurely looking at. It's about $1,600, something like this. And optically, it looks very nice. So that may be the contender for the throne, but I just need to spend more time with it. All the ones I've spent significant amount of time with to date, get the Delta or spend $3,000 on, like Swarovski, that kind of stuff. But stay tuned. I'm continuously looking at this. As we go along, I will know more. One of the problems with me is that I don't make recommendations from a cursory look. I spend my freaking quality time looking at stuff. Manufacturers hate this shit. They want feedback and articles and reviews as quickly as humanly possible, and I don't do that. I just freaking don't. Not my thing. But I have a lot of appreciation for their troubles in this world, but I don't care, right? I am ultimately on the side of the consumer. I may maintain cordial relationship with a bunch of manufacturers, but if they get pissed at me, there are other manufacturers. I really don't care. When I make a recommendation, I have to know a lot about the optic. I have to spend a lot of time with it. So bear with me. I know I'm slow. Before this is done, I will be able to give you a truly qualified answer across the board for a good range of prices, just not fully yet. I would think night vision like PVS-14 is digital. No, PVS-14 is actually an analog device. That should probably be a part of the conversation we have about night vision stuff. Mr. MZH, bang for the buck. What is Dark Lord's favorite tactical rifle optic? 20 to 30 power. It sort of depends on what you want to do, right? So my favorite at the moment is a Vortex Razor Uhd DLHT 4.5 to 22 by 50 as a crossover optic, because I can hunt with it, do precision shooting with it, that kind of stuff, and it's about $1,500. Generally, all these Japanese scopes in the $1,500 to $2,000 range are the sweet spot. Tractoric 4.5 to 30 by 50 is very nice. Athlon Kronos 4.5 to 29, Delta Striker 4.5 to 30, Vortex Razor Gen 2 4.5 to 27 by 56. They're all in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, and they're all increasingly competent. I think that's where you get the most for your money. Higher end scopes are clearly better. Is it where you get the most for your money? In my opinion, no. Am I gonna stop shooting with my tangents and marches? No. If I had to start over and spend my own money, for tactical scopes right now, I'd be sitting in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. Mr. Geography Nerd, could you recommend a higher quality 6X in Yosemite? I love how stable it is and the field of view. I looked last week. There are a lot marketed as marine that are 7 by something. Yeah, there are a lot of quote-unquote marine binoculars that are 7 by something. 7 is just a little more stable. They're usually a little bit larger. The binocular I mentioned earlier, I put it on the screen, this Maven B30, B3 6 by 30 binocular is quite nice. I'll put up a link at the end of the video. I'll put up a bunch of links in the description. It's a higher-end roof prism binocular, nice, compact, very good optical quality. There are not too many good 7s, unfortunately. One of my favorite configurations overall is a 7 by 42. There isn't a ton out there. 8X binoculars kind of supplanted everything. So if you want compact, a 6 by 30 cover YF or a 6 by 30 cover YF or 6 by 30 Maven B3, I'd be mostly looking at that. I'll look around my notes. I had an inexpensive Celestron 7 power. It was okay. It was not great, but it may be discontinued. It's called Celestron Granite. Pretty sure I have one here somewhere. It's not bad, but I like the 6 by 30 Mavens quite a bit more. They're about $500, and I think it's a really dandy little binocular. I'm quite happy with it. Okay. Oh, that's an interesting question. How come I can look through a stereoscopic microscope for 5 to 6 hours a day, but Binos not very long, maybe due to standing versus sitting down? Comfort level in the body? Yes, to a significant degree, yes. You'll find you can look comfortably through a binocular for a while if you're sitting and the binocular is on a tripod. When you are looking through your microscope, you're in a more comfortable position and the microscope is heavy and it's not shaking at all. That makes a huge difference. Okay. Is the Delta 9x45 rangefinder made in Japan, Philippines, or China? Not that it matters. If it's awesome, just wondering. It's awesome for the money, right? If you want really, really awesome, spend really, really a lot of money. It's made in China. Most LRF binoculars are made in China these days, or in Europe. I'm struggling to think of any coming from Japan. GPO Range Guide 10 by 50. They are reportedly very good. I have not had a chance to see any. I think it came up a couple of times. I'm sort of friendly with a couple of people at GPO, but a few months back, their PR person in the US stopped responding to my emails. So I sort of stopped trying. If they come to SHOT Show, I'll go talk to them, see what gives. But honestly, like I said, there are a lot of brands out there, and I don't want to chase after anyone. They may just be busy, or they may not want to deal with me after I took the British rep to task for saying stupid things on Instagram. I need a no-knocker. It's reportedly very nice, but I have never seen it. Sorry, Emily, did you already cover your favorite bang for the buck standalone rangefinder? No, I haven't yet, and I've been looking very carefully at LRF binoculars, not as much at standalone laser rangefinders. Leicas are always historic. I always used Leicas. At some point, I got this SIG. It was several years ago. This Kilo 2400, and it still works great. I'm generally very happy with how SIG does standalone rangefinders, so that's not a bad thing. Vortex has a couple of new ones coming up that look very promising. Once I'm able to get my hands on them, I'll take a look. But I have not examined lower end rangefinders very much. I have lots of mileage with different Leicas, and they're very good. And from in the lower price ranges, I've been primarily using SIGs and had a bunch of people buy them per my recommendation. They're all happy. Okay. JB. All right. Well, I'm happy I have your trust, my friend. Is that stabilization an electronic process, a mechanical process, or combo of both? I assume you're talking about those image stabilized Canon binoculars. Well, by definition, it's optoelectronic, right? You have gyroscopes that sense motion, little electric motors that actually move physical pieces, and that's what stabilizes it. So it's an electro-optical process. At $1,500 range, the Leica scopes show better optical compared to others. You have to be a little bit more specific which scopes you're talking about. I have not seen a Leica rifle scope in the $1,500 range for a long time. I think I've got a new model called M+, something like that, that I think gets in that price range, but I haven't seen them yet, so I really don't know. Okay, Drew and Audrey Sigurdsson are discussing islands. Oh, it looks like Iceland is getting another volcano waking up. That sounds like a blast. Pun intended. Okay. I want to go back for a moment and go back a little bit, talk about spotting scopes, because it's this show for now probably came through as me being negative about spotters. I'm not negative about spotters. I like spotters, use them all the time. I want more spotters designed for shooters, and that's why the ones I have here have reticles and are designed for shooters. The one I use at the range arguably the most is this guy. Like I said, it's upside down. Like this, it's a Athlon Kronos 7 to 42 by 60. A Kronos Tactical, excuse me. This thing up top, you can put a laser rangefinder on here and adjust elevation, so you can put a, if your laser rangefinder has a 1/4-20 thing, this one doesn't, but I have a bracket for it, like this, and you can line them up so that the laser rangefinder is pointing in the same direction as the spotter. I have this with me for a couple of different reasons. It's kind of hefty. It is fairly heavy. The field of view is not hugely wide, not as wide as conventional spotting scopes, but it's decent optically, not the best at 42, but quite good up to about 30-35. Has good eye relief, so I don't have to budget. It's streamlined, so it easily fits in long, narrow pockets on packs and drag bags. Most critically, most importantly, it goes down to low magnification. I don't need to use it at 7 power, but I can. On low magnification, it's really good in low light. When it gets really dark, I can turn down the magnification, use it as a ginormous binocular. When I don't have a spotting scope, I can turn down magnification to, I don't know, 10, something like that, and do this. Use it handheld and see well, and the bloody thing has a reticle in it. Perfectly decent reticle that allows you a few different means of ranging. When they originally designed it, I helped Athlon with the reticle a little bit. It was one thing I wanted them to do that they didn't do. I don't particularly like reticles and spotting scopes that go right through the center field of view. I like them to be a little bit below, a little bit to the side. This one, to me, looks like it's going straight through the center, which is not ideal in my opinion. I prefer it to be just a little bit out of the way, but it's not a deal breaker. This flexibility of magnification is why I use this thing. But in many ways, this is like almost like a rifle scope that's just not designed to go on a rifle. I tried to convince them to put an externally adjustable mount and make the world's best air gun or rimfire scope out of it, but they haven't. It's not designed for recoil, I guess, or something. I don't know. But it's that's really the reason I use this thing so much on the range. It's not the best optically, but it gives me the most flexibility. Overall, the best spotting scope for shooters is, like I said, the Hensoldt Spotter 60 or Spotter 45 that does have a front focal plane reticle, folded light path, and an amazing, amazing, amazing depth of field. Folded light path scopes tend to have fairly long focal length and tend to have really, really great depth of field. For shooters, I think that matters more than for birders, because one of the things I need to do when I'm spotting for other people, I need to be able to pick up bullet trace. And picking up bullet trace is immeasurably easier if your observation optic has nice and significant depth of field. I can sort of pick up bullet trace with 15 power binoculars and stuff, but I want to see it in a little more detail. More magnification, a spotting scope simply works better for me. And at the moment, there is just more spotting scopes with reticles than there are binoculars with reticles, right? If I go into the field, if I think I'll be doing a lot of glassing at very long distances, I'm probably gonna have a high magnification binocular with me and a support of some sort, etc. But 15 power binocular is not something I can use handheld to just go and scan. I'm just not steady enough for it. So if I don't think I need to be glassing with very high magnification, what I'm gonna take with me when I go is what I just had it. No, oh, there we go. Very frequently, what I might have in my belt pouch or my pack, I'll have the 6x32 binoculars, and buried somewhere else, I'll have this spotting scope. So this is that Athlon Ares with a fixed power eyepiece. This is 22, also has a reticle. Same reticle as the Athlon Chronos I just showed you. Same design that we worked out admittedly a while back. It's also right in the center of the field of view that I don't like, but I can live with it. But it's a smaller spotter. I can still have it with me. And for a quick look to get more details, it does give me that much more magnification. It's not ideal for big country for everything else. A combination of a 6 power binocular and a 22 power spotter gives me a comparatively small package that I can lug into the field and do good things with, right? Another option is to have a 6 power binocular and a 15 power binocular, right? But neither one of these has a reticle. If, for example, I want to look at if there's something there I can use for distance estimation, I can do it with a reticle. But given a choice, if I had my druthers, if I had a choice, I would, if I could get a 15 or 16 power binocular with a laser rangefinder and a reticle, combination of these two would do 98% of everything that I need. Hopefully, something like that will be made at some point. But for a really big country, if you really want to see the details, even a 15 power binocular is not enough. So when I went for the cheap hunt, it was really interesting. So I was primarily glassing with a 10 power binocular. And then we had a couple of people with an 18 power Razor Uhd, which was very, very good. And the guide was using his Leica laser rangefinder binoculars when we really wanted to, when we found the sheep and identified that several looked promising, when he really wanted to figure out which one is a shooter, he pulled out his Swarovski BTX spotting scope. And because you can't get close to those freaking sheep, and if you really, really want to see detail, you do need magnification, not for very long. I don't think he ever looked through his spotting scope for more than 10 minutes, or more than 5 even maybe. We spent a lot more time with binoculars, but when you really are trying to identify what gives, you need the spotting scope, right? There is no, unfortunately, one device that fits all. And we were fortunate is what is sort of an ATV hunt, right? We were roaming around the high desert in ATV and glassing a lot, and then would find the sheep that was shootable and go on a hike up here. I talked about that. If I'm backpacking in, I can't carry that much optic in it, and a large spotting scope would probably be the first thing I sacrifice in lieu of a high magnification binoculars. I think as I do this more, I may change my mind, but for now, that's what I'm sort of converging on. Okay. All right. Let's see. Mr. Odor Sigurdsson. I have heard that the Bushnell Legend Tactical T-Series spotting scope, 15 to 45 by 60 with mill reticle is great and is about 500. I think that is their folded light path design, right? Let me see. Legend. Let me look at the picture, make sure I'm not bullshitting. They change their product lines so frequently that sometimes I have to double check. Make sure that the product I'm talking about has not been replaced. Okay, 1545 by 60. That's the folded light path one. It looked very promising. It had a nice reticle and all that sort of stuff. I know a bunch of people who bought them. Probably close to half had problems. Maybe this has gotten stabilized yet, but when originally the quality and consistency was just not there. Maybe it improved with time, but I haven't heard anything good about them for a little while. Just curious, have you seen any antique binoculars that have held up well? For instance, early 40s German 6x30 Leica, post-war copied by Soviets. Many of these older binoculars, I mean, optical design is quite good and they hold up well in good light, but they're not sealed, and when you have stray light and stuff, they start to suffer. They hold up okay. They're nice. They have this nice feel of vintage glass, but haven't explored antique ones too much. But from what I have seen, I'm gonna stick to modern binoculars. Yeah, so Drew is pointing out a Millshop place called apexgunparts.com. All sorts of weird and strange stuff there. Can be costly depending on what you're looking for. Drew, I've seen them for sale, but wonder if they're any good aside from sitting on the shelf. They're perfectly serviceable and all that sort of stuff. But for field use, I'd buy modern stuff that has a warranty, that is sealed against moisture and stuff like that. I would probably not experiment too much with antique stuff. It's fun and it's interesting, but I would not risk a hunt of a lifetime on an antique binocular. Me personally, it's to each his own. Stuff's growing on me. Not that much. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. So one of the types of electro-optic integration I've been kind of stumbling on here and there lately is integration of various projected displays, like overlay displays and ballistic computers, stuff like that, and rifle scopes like the Steiner IFS, and also, excuse me, in binoculars and spotting scopes. I've seen a few prototypes. I don't think they're out yet. I'm gonna kind of keep an eye on it. We'll probably see some of this out come SHOT Show time. But that becomes sort of an interesting thing where a binocular can display information from some additional sensors and stuff in only a part of the field of view. One of the potential issues right now with some of the binoculars is that, so in a laser range finding binocular, like like the Fury 5000s, for example, in one of the barrels there is a transparent display that gives you the laser rangefinder aiming point, and that displays the distance, all that sort of stuff. But it does change the optical characteristics of it. I suspect it's one of the things that makes it a little bit more difficult to build a good binocular that also has laser range-finding capability. I'm somewhat intrigued by all this projected stuff that does not have anything in the center that can have projected information in the top third of the screen, so you're not degrading what you see through the middle of the barrel. I mean, there are ways where you can add an aiming point without degrading the image quality so much. So I'm really, really curious to see how that is going to pan out. All right. What are you drinking? Are we guessing again? You can guess if you'd like. I'll tell you at the end. I've never had this stuff before. Probably never will again. But I've been in and out, so you may have mentioned it already. No, I only said that I don't like it. Is what you're drinking the Greek ouzo with water? No. So I hate licorice. So I had COVID and I lost some of my taste of sense and smell, and not all of it came back, but enough of it came back that I hate ouzo and Jägermeister and all that crap. Okay. As far as overall information on spotters and binoculars and LRF binoculars that I sort of wanted to cover, I kind of covered everything that I had in mind, I think. So if you guys have any specific question, anything else, anything I haven't covered or have covered and you want more detail on, now is the time to ask. I want to limit this to less than 2 hours, so we've got about 25 minutes left or thereabouts, or less if you guys are done. I really only have one thing that I want to mention a little bit, and that is spotting with a spotting scope versus a rifle scope. For example, so here is a rifle scope. It's a March 5-42. And it, as the name suggests, goes from 5 power to 42 power, has really, really good image quality. And why can't I use this as a spotter? The simple answer is that you can, and increasingly people do. Much more so in the tactical world than in the hunting world. Okay. What are the advantages and what are the downsides? Well, I've alluded to that in the video I did last week. But one of the major disadvantages of a rifle scope is that because of recoil, stuff like that, your eye needs to be some not insignificant distance from the scope, right? That's the eye relief. And because of that, there's a lot of stray light and other things coming in from around the scope that degrade your ability to see. However, some of these high-end rifle scopes are so good that it's not as much of a disadvantage anymore as it used to be. A similar quality spotting scope will still give you an image that's much better, much wider field of view, and stuff like that. But when I take the March or the 525 Tangent or any high-end scope like that with me, I don't really need a spotter. I can spot for others, call out shots. It's got a reticle in it. I can see trace. I can see all sorts of stuff. But the basic problem is that if I want to see trace, if somebody's shooting, I'm usually going to be just behind them, maybe slightly to the side. Somehow, I don't want to be behind my body shooting just in front of me with a rifle and a tripod looking through a scope, right? So I don't want to have anything from basic safety standpoint. Rifle scope is not ideal. I can always take it off my gun, put it on the tripod, and put it on my gun. But then, even with nice mounts, I'm paranoid. I always have to check zeros. So for many practical shooting situations, a high-end rifle scope with good magnification is enough. But I don't think it fully replaces a proper spotting scope, right? However, for quite a few applications, I can see it supplanting the spotting scope from a standpoint of eye fatigue and all that, and all the same arguments apply. You're using one eye and all that sort of stuff. I don't think a high-end rifle scope supplants a nice set of binoculars. But between a high-end rifle scope and a spotting scope, it's a little bit more of a battle. Okay. How's the video showcasing the optical testing that you use is coming along? Not obligated to do it, just curious. Yeah, I'll do it at some point. I honestly haven't been working on it. It's somewhere in my list, but it might take a little time. Will you be wearing a Night Force or Colors shirt for your live guests? They may enjoy your advertising, quite possibly. I don't own a Night Force or Colors shirt. If I owned one, I would have no qualms about wearing it. You guys have to keep in mind, I have nothing against Night Force or Colors. I find their displeasure with me being honest somewhat humorous, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't give a rat's ass. Yesterday, I recorded a 2-hour podcast together with Kaylin Wojcik and Phil from Modern Day Sniper. So it should be out, I think, probably next Wednesday. And 2 hours of talking about optics with those guys, which is an absolute honor. They are two scout snipers, some of the best shooters in the world, probably. My only regret is that we spent 2 hours talking about optics, while I would have rather spent 2 hours picking their brain than them picking my brain. But maybe I'll ask them to come aboard here, and we can all pick their brains a little bit. I think that would be helpful for us. But I think they're both sponsored by Colors. I'm pretty sure Phil is, and they're perfectly reasonable scopes. I have my complaints with them that are reasonably well documented, and I don't know. Like I said, it's for me, it's not personal. For them, maybe it is. Yeah, I really don't care. Okay. Or maybe a T-Rex shirt. Okay, I'm done poking. So the T-Rex is different, right? I learned recently there are two T-Rexes. There's the T-Rex Arms, which is the slimy dude who sells holsters and shit like that. Him, I don't really know. I haven't heard anything good, but I don't know. I think Lucas or something, I don't know. And there's a Tibosaurus Rex, the guy who talks about optics and guns and all that. So the second guy, I think he's just a slime ball, so I wouldn't wear his T-shirt, but Night Force Colors is perfectly fine by me. Frank, I like using my scope to spot smaller field of view, but it has a reticle I can read and give feedback. Correct. Having a reticle is a big advantage. The disadvantage is that I cannot. My rifle scope sits on a gun, and I don't always be pointing a gun in the same direction as an observation optic. But when you can, if you have a nice scope it is a perfectly viable option. My apologies if I drove you to drink. No, you didn't drive me to drink. Pretty certain it was my mother, but the jury's still out. All right. Mr. Sigurdsson, thank you for a great live chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that. Okay, Lee. $1,000 spot and $1,000 scope, or $2,000 scope, safety concerns notwithstanding. It depends. For tactical precision shooting range use, $2,000 scope. If we're talking about hunting out in the wilderness, etc., $1,000 hunting scope and $1,000 spotter to be able to explore things out there. When are Dark Lord Optics coming out? I'll run the booth at SHOT Show for free. And Manitou says that he will put on a tight dress and showcase them. Given this information, never. Weird. I thought that was weird. Okay. For that, I need to stay sober. So tea it is. That's interesting. Hold on. So the other camera runs on a battery. I thought I had a power supply in, but maybe not. I restarted it. Hopefully should be okay. What is your experience with the rangefinders? Fairly extensive, with quite a lot of them. My view on anything with an optical channel is that I want it to be a good optic in addition to a good rangefinder. So rangefinder to me has to be decent monocular that I can use to look at stuff, and a rangefinder. A rangefinding binocular has to be a good binocular and a rangefinder. To me, all of this stuff makes a significant difference. A lot of the less expensive laser rangefinders are actually somewhat decent rangefinders, but they're not good optics. The somewhat high-end stuff, like the high-end SIGs and the Leicas and a few others, Swarovski, is good. Zeiss PRF is pretty decent, although I like the Leicas a little more. They're good monoculars and good laser rangefinders, so for me that's useful. But the really, really cheap stuff, for the laser rangefinding, they're decent, but I want more out of them. Okay. All right, Mr. Manitou is. Let's hope you don't sink into alcohol-induced depression just because you have destroyed the world's chance of ever seeing Dark Lord branded optics. It's all on you, man. Whatever is missing out, JB, I've got some great tits. Let's not bring up your rubber woman. Okay. Anyhow, where was I? Yeah, that's largely it. Okay. I think SIG with their kilo is on the right track, combining into one. Yes, I think they are, but quite a few brands I think are going to strengthen their rangefinder game in the not so distant future. So right now I'm looking at LRF binoculars pretty carefully because I think the product combinations have matured to some degree. The proof of that is that a Delta 9x45 LRF binocular that I posted a video on for $1,200. It is a good binocular and a good laser rangefinder, right? Until fairly recently, you couldn't find there were rangefinding binoculars for $1,200 that were good rangefinders, but not very good binoculars. Now there is at least one and probably more. So that's what I'm looking at right now. I expect some new rangefinders introduced in the next few months. So next year, I'm probably going to spend a little more time with this form factor and see really what's out there. City Boy, New York, YouTube, Mr. DLO, and I continuation to this. It's nice to see you too. Huh. Is there laser rangefinders in the mono system? I'm not sure what you mean. Please elaborate. When are you going to be able to talk Delta Optics into showing up at SHOT Show? I'd love to see more of their presence in the US. You know, they've been trying to get in for a couple of years, to the best of my knowledge, but now with COVID, I know a lot of European companies are not itching to try. So it's really hard for me to say for sure. I will check with them and see. I don't know. I'm not aware of them coming to 2022, but I know they want to. They want to do more in US. Their presence here is growing. They're doing all right. Growing slowly, but growing the right way. So we'll see. Okay. Okay, by mono, you mean binoculars. Right, okay, yeah. Okay. Not in the handheld, I should have mentioned in the optical type units. Okay, so I still don't understand what you mean. Are you talking about laser rangefinders and spotting scopes, like large spotting scopes like this guy, like this with an integrated laser rangefinder? Is that what you mean? Something like that? Specify, please. Best laser rangefinder for long-range prairie dogs. I read in the forum that Leica is significantly better because it has a narrow beam. Good for tiny targets. Leica is very good. The latest SIG laser rangefinders, like the Kilo 10K and stuff like that, also have very, very low beam divergence. So they're promising to be very good, but they're new. So I don't know. Don't have first-hand knowledge yet. Mr. DLO, what is your recommendation for an inexpensive spotter for spotting 500 yards max? Thanks for generous sharing of knowledge. One of the problems with truly inexpensive spotters is that the quality is kind of hit and miss. I think Athlon is doing a really good job with a lot of their spotting scope. I use the Ares UHD spotters, and I really like this little 65 millimeter one that I have here. It's variable with variable eyepiece over the fixed one. It's not that cheap, but it's not hugely expensive, and it is quite good. I'd probably pay some attention to Athlon. That should be on your list. I like Kowa high-end spotters. I don't really like their inexpensive stuff as much. Look at Athlon. Look at Athlon Ares. I'm quite happy with it. Haven't looked at many other smaller, inexpensive spotters. I think they have a Helos that looked promising, but I haven't spent enough time with it. JB, Jared, I agree. I'm loving this stuff. I reached out to them and asked for 1 to 8, 1 to 10 on PVO. They said maybe 22 got my hopes up. Yeah, they've got one they're working on. I haven't even seen a prototype yet, so I don't. I mean, I have an idea what it is. I know which OEM they're talking to, and I think I know which one it is, and it should be quite nice. But until I see it, who knows? Frank, what are the most accurate turrets you've ever tested? I like the glass in my Minox ZP5, but much prefer the turrets on my Collis K6-24. So most high-end scopes are accurate. In terms of feel, the best is this. This is a Tangent Theta 5-25. This is the best turret ever made. I've never seen anything as good as this. That's kind of a simple question. Close very close second. Okay, excuse me, my phone is making noises, and that is my wife. Okay, interesting. A very close second is the new locking turret from March, also really, really good. And sharing the close second spot with March is the new DT2 Plus turret from Schmidt and Bender, and this and March are more compact. And I really like the turret in the Z comp as well. So I'd say the best is probably March, and Z comp, the new Schmidt turret. The best is Tangent Later, excuse me, and a close second place is Z comp, the new Schmidt turret, and new March turret. And why I have a $5,000 scope sitting under my desk is anybody's guess. JB, I hope so, but Illich has worked with them, so I'd hope they tell him if they were coming. Here's the deal. If they told you they're coming, I can mention it, right? Otherwise, unless I have specific permission to release information about the product, I will not. That's just it. Delta has good things planned, right? They are growing, they're pushing, they're trying to do good things. They are, but when is anybody's guess? Everybody's having supply chain issues. How about laser range finding scopes? Maybe that's the future. I don't know if it's the future. There are already some. There is really fancy Swarovski DS. There's less fancy, but very, very functional, very underrated Burris Illuminator scopes. There are a few others. The form factor that I like is not when the laser rangefinder is integrated into the scope itself using the same objective. The form factor that I prefer is what people now doing with a lot of thermal scopes, where the laser rangefinder is kind of a little bit offset to the side with information on it projected into the view through a scope. There it's easier because it's all digital, but with all these projected reticles and screens, we can now do that also with conventional rifle scopes. The reason I like them to be a little bit offset to the side or on top or something like that is that I expect to see various clip-ons used at an increasingly high rate. And if there's something in front of the rifle scope, you cannot use a coaxial laser. It needs to be offset. But yeah, integration of a laser rangefinder with the rifle scope is a fairly natural thing. Or probably the best scope for hunting and has a rangefinder and ballistic solution options included would be the Swarovski DS 5 to 25 by 52, but darn expensive. It's really expensive. It's also really heavy. I would rather have a normal lightweight hunting scope and a rangefinder with me. It's probably a good option for long range hunting where you're not moving around too much, but otherwise I think it's too heavy of a scope for hunting. If your wife called, maybe she's watching to see how you react. It was nice knowing you. My wife is an angel and a saint, and she tolerates all my different quirks, and she knows that I'm supposed to be wrapping up around 9 o'clock. It's 9:09, where I am. So she thought I would have been done by now. I need to rest in peace. It takes a very particular personality to tolerate me on a long-term basis, and we've been now married for 17 years. So I don't think my wife is going to divorce me over this. But you are guys right that I am very fortunate. All right, it's 1 hour 54 minutes. 6 minutes left for questions. That's the countdown. Manitou thinks that my wife is having a countdown. Anything is possible, if I vanish and not resurface for the next 6 years, then you know what happened. All right, gentlemen. It seems like you have managed to run out of questions. If you think of something later, put it in the comments under the video. Okay, Manitou. Have you gone down the telescope rabbit hole at all? No, intentionally so. I have enough hobbies as is. It is kind of related. I'm an optics guy, but I don't want to. I don't have time. It's interesting, but I just don't have time. Okay. Thank you, and thank you, all of you in the chat. I really enjoy learning this stuff. Great. Thank you guys for participating as actively as you do. I really do appreciate it. That's ultimately what keeps me going. I enjoy the live things because of the interaction. I always have some sort of a quasi-lecture pre-planned, and I weave it in the best I can, but I'm ultimately here for the Q&A. I think that is the most important part of it. That's where I really get inspiration for future topics. Okay. I'd love to see another great guest in the future. I'm talking to a few people. I'm hoping to have some people over. We'll see. All right, gentlemen. Thank you all for being here and participating. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, post them in the comments or go to my website, darklordofoptics.com. And I hope to see you there. Good night.